A lawyer's office in Nashville, March 1968. Johnny Cash and June Carter are sitting on opposite sides of a conference table. Between them, depositions, custody documents, and a court order that could destroy everything they've built together. June's ex-husband is demanding full custody of their two daughters. His legal team has compiled evidence, photographs, witness statements, documentation of every arrest, every missed show, every public incident involving Johnny Cash. The lawyer leans forward, tells June there's a way to win, a simple solution, a strategic lie that would protect the girls and end the case immediately. All she has to do is say that Johnny Cash isn't part of her life anymore, that he won't be around her daughters, that she's choosing them over him. And Johnny is sitting right there, listening, waiting to see what she'll choose. If stories about moments when love collided with survival, when someone had to choose between loyalty and losing everything, matter to you, consider subscribing. This is what we examine here. March 1968. A law office on West End Avenue in Nashville. The kind of place where careers and families are dismantled with paperwork and strategy sessions. June Carter was 38 years old, divorced twice, mother to two daughters, Carlene, 12 years old, and Rosie, 8. She'd been performing with Johnny Cash for nearly 7 years, had become essential to his career, his recovery, his survival. But she wasn't married to him, not yet. They'd been in love for years, but June had been hesitant, scared. She'd watched him nearly die from pills, had pulled him out of situations that should have killed him, had covered for him, lied for him, protected him when most people would have walked away. And now, her second ex-husband, Edwin "Rip" Nix, a stock car racer with money and connections, was using her relationship with Johnny Cash to take her children. The custody arrangement had been tenuous for years. June had primary custody, but it was conditional. The court had made clear that any evidence of moral impropriety, any suggestion that she was exposing her daughters to dangerous or unstable influences, could trigger a modification. Rip's lawyers had been building a case for months. They had documentation of Johnny's arrests, newspaper clippings about drug charges, witness testimony from people who'd seen June and Johnny together on tour, sharing hotel rooms, behaving like a couple even though they weren't married. They had photographs of Johnny Cash high, erratic, barely functional, and June standing next to him, trying to hold him together. The legal argument was simple. June Carter was prioritizing her relationship with an unstable, drug-addicted performer over the well-being of her children. She was exposing them to an environment that was chaotic, dangerous, morally questionable. The court had scheduled a hearing for the following week. June's lawyer, a sharp, pragmatic woman named Margaret Hollis, who'd handled dozens of custody cases, had called this meeting to discuss strategy. And she'd insisted that Johnny Cash be present.
Think about that position. You're fighting to keep your children. The person you love is the reason you might lose them, and your lawyer is about to ask you to make a choice between them. What would you do? Leave a comment. I'm genuinely curious. Margaret Hollis had spread the evidence across the conference table. Photographs, police reports, depositions from venue managers, hotel staff, other performers who'd witnessed Johnny's behavior over the years. "This is what we're dealing with," she said. "This is what Rip's team will present to the judge, and it's devastating. Not because it's fabricated, but because it's true." June stared at the documents. Her face was carefully neutral, but her hands were shaking slightly. Johnny sat across from her, silent, looking at the same evidence, the photographic record of his own destruction. Hollis continued, "The judge is going to ask one question. Are your daughters being exposed to an unstable, potentially dangerous environment? If the answer is yes, you lose custody. It's that simple. They're not exposed to anything, June said quietly. Johnny's never been around them when he's not himself. That's not what the evidence suggests. There are witness statements placing Mr. Cash at your home, at family gatherings, around your daughters on multiple occasions. He's been getting better. He's been trying. Trying isn't good enough for family court. The judge doesn't care about potential. She cares about risk. And right now, Johnny Cash represents an unacceptable risk. The room went quiet. Johnny hadn't said anything, hadn't defended himself, just sat there, absorbing the weight of how his life had become evidence against the person he loved. Hollis leaned forward. But there's a solution, a way to win this cleanly and permanently. June looked up. What? You testify that your relationship with Mr. Cash is professional only, that you work together but maintain appropriate boundaries, that he has no access to your children and never will, that you're committed to protecting them from any potentially harmful influences, including him. The silence that followed was absolute.
June's voice was barely audible. You want me to lie? I want you to protect your daughters. By saying Johnny isn't part of my life? By saying he isn't part of your daughters' lives, which legally speaking he isn't. You're not married. He has no parental rights. You can honestly testify that he plays no role in their upbringing. But that's not... June stopped, looked at Johnny. He still hadn't spoken. Hollis pressed forward. June, I understand this is difficult, but we need to be strategic. Rip's team is going to paint you as someone who's chosen a relationship with an unstable man over your responsibility as a mother. If you can credibly demonstrate that your daughters are completely insulated from Johnny's problems, we undermine their entire case. And what happens after? When we win custody and then Johnny and I... Then you maintain appearances for a reasonable period. Eventually, circumstances change, but right now, in this hearing, you need to establish clear boundaries, for the record. June stood up, walked to the window. The view overlooked a parking lot and the busy street beyond. Margaret, you're asking me to tell a judge that the man I love, the man who's been trying to get clean for me, who's been working every day to be better, you're asking me to say he's too dangerous to be around my children? I'm asking you to say what's necessary to keep your children. June turned back. And what happens to him when he hears me say that in court? When I look at a judge and testify that Johnny Cash is a risk I won't expose my daughters to? That's between you and him. My job is to win this case. This kind of story about moments when legal strategy collided with human loyalty matters. If you believe that some choices can't be made without destroying something essential, consider subscribing. This channel is built for people who understand that tension. Johnny Cash finally broke his silence. His voice was low, rough. She should do it. Everyone turned to look at him. What? June's voice cracked slightly. You should testify exactly what she's telling you to testify. That I'm not part of your daughters' lives, that you keep me away from them, that I represent a risk you're not willing to take. Johnny, because it's true, June, all of it. I am unstable. I have been arrested. I have put you in situations that could have destroyed your custody arrangement. Your lawyer's right. I'm the problem. June crossed back to the table, stood directly across from him. You're not the problem. Rip is the problem. His lawyer's twisting everything into... They're not twisting anything. Those photographs are real.
Those arrest records are real. The times I've shown up high, the times you've had to cover for me, the times I've put you in impossible situations, all of that is real." His hands were flat on the table, steady, but only through visible effort. "So if testifying that you keep me away from your girls is what it takes to protect them, then that's what you should do, because protecting them is more important than protecting me." Margaret Hollis nodded approvingly. "That's very reasonable, Mr. Cash. June, I think—" "No." June's voice was firm now, clear. Hollis stopped. "Excuse me? No, I'm not testifying to something that turns Johnny into a threat, that validates everything Rip's lawyers are saying about him. June, I need you to understand what's at stake here. I understand perfectly. You want me to win custody by sacrificing the person who's been trying harder than anyone to be worth standing by. You want me to save my daughters by confirming that the man I love is too damaged to be trusted around children." She looked at Johnny. "And you're telling me to do it because you think you deserve it, because you think your past means you should be treated like a permanent danger." Johnny didn't respond. His jaw was tight. "Well, I won't do it. I won't stand in a courtroom and reduce you to evidence of my poor judgment. I won't let Rip's lawyers turn you into a cautionary tale." Margaret Hollis stood. Her patience was wearing thin. "June, this isn't about nobility. This isn't about standing by your man. This is about your daughters, about whether they live with you or with their father. Everything else is secondary." "Everything else is not secondary. How I win matters. What I have to say to win matters. What I have to become to win matters." "You're being emotional." "I'm being honest. You want me to treat Johnny like he's disposable, like his recovery doesn't matter as long as I get what I need. That's not love. That's using someone and calling it strategy." Johnny stood now too. "June, listen to me. Your daughters need you. They don't need me. If the only way to keep them safe is to say I'm not part of your life, then say it. I can handle it." "Can you?" June's voice was sharp now. "Can you really? Because I've watched you spiral every time someone treats you like you're beyond redemption. Every time someone looks at you like you're just another junkie who'll never change. That's what kills your progress. Not the drugs, not the pressure, but the belief that you're permanent damage." "I am damaged. You're recovering. There's a difference, and I'm not going to stand in a courtroom and erase that difference to win a custody case. If this moment, this refusal to sacrifice someone's humanity for strategic gain means something to you, hit the like button. It helps these stories reach more people. That's all. Just, if it mattered, let it show." Margaret Hollis gathered her documents. Her voice was cold now, professional distance replacing the pretense of concern. "Mrs. Carter, I need to be very clear about something. If you go into that courtroom and refuse to establish boundaries between your personal life and your children's well-being, you will lose this case. The judge will see a mother who's prioritizing an adult relationship over child safety, and she will modify custody accordingly." "Then that's what happens." "You're willing to lose your daughters to prove a point?" "I'm willing to lose a custody case rather than destroy the person I love to win it." Hollis looked at Johnny. "Mr. Cash, can you talk some sense into her?" Johnny was staring at June. His expression was complicated gratitude, fear, disbelief, something else. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I can." Hollis closed her briefcase. "Then I can't help you. If you're not willing to use the strategy most likely to succeed, there's nothing more I can do. I'll send my final bill." She walked to the door, stopped. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Carter, I hope your principles comfort you when your daughters are living with their father, because that's what's going to happen." She left. The door closed. June and Johnny stood on opposite sides of the conference table, surrounded by evidence of his worst moments, facing the consequences of her refusal to deny him. Johnny spoke first. "You should have let me take the fall." "There was no fall to take. There was just a lie that would have made things easier. A strategic lie, one that would have protected your children. At the cost of confirming that you're exactly what Rip's lawyers say you are, unstable, dangerous, unfit to be around children. How would you have come back from that?" Johnny shook his head. "I don't matter as much as Carlene and Rosie matter." "You matter to them, too. You matter to me. And teaching my daughters that I'll sacrifice someone I love to win a legal battle that's not protecting them, that's teaching them that people are disposable when they become inconvenient." She walked around the table, stood in front of him. "Margaret was asking me to win by becoming someone I don't want to be. Someone who treats recovery like it's not real. Someone who looks at a person trying to be better and says, 'Sorry, you're still too broken to acknowledge.' But what if she's right? What if I am too broken? Then you're too broken, but I'm not going to be the one who confirms it in court testimony. I'm not going to be the one who looks at a judge and says the person I love is too dangerous to trust." Johnny was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was unsteady. "What if you lose them?" "Then I lose them fighting for what's right, not by sacrificing what's true."
The custody hearing happened the following week. June testified without her lawyer present, represented herself, told the truth about her relationship with Johnny Cash, about his struggles, about his progress, about her belief that recovery was real and deserved to be acknowledged. Rip's lawyers presented all their evidence, the photographs, the arrest records, the documentation of Johnny's instability. The judge listened, asked June directly, "Do you believe Mr. Cash is a positive influence on your daughters?" June answered, "I believe he's someone trying to be better. And I believe that's what I want my daughters to learn, that people can change, that mistakes don't define you permanently, that recovery deserves respect." The judge took 2 weeks to decide. When the ruling came, June kept primary custody. The judge noted that while concerns about Johnny Cash's past were legitimate, June had demonstrated appropriate boundaries and judgment in managing her daughter's exposure to potentially difficult situations. But the ruling also included strict supervision requirements, regular check-ins, mandatory reporting if Johnny's behavior became erratic, immediate review if there were any incidents. June won, but barely, and with conditions that made clear how close she'd come to losing. After the ruling, Johnny asked June why she'd done it, why she'd risked everything rather than take the easy strategic lie. She told him something he never forgot. "Because if I'd won by saying you were too dangerous to trust, you would have believed it. You would have internalized it. You would have decided that's what you really were, and all your progress would have stopped." "But you almost lost your daughters." "I almost lost them by refusing to lie. That's different than losing them because I made a mistake. If I'd lost them because I told the truth, because I refused to treat your recovery like it didn't matter, I could have lived with that." She paused. "But if I'd won by confirming you were permanent damage, by testifying that you were too broken to be around children, I don't think you would have survived that, and I don't think I could have lived with being the person who said it." Johnny was quiet. Then, "You risked your children for me." "I risked a custody case for what was true. There's a difference." 2 weeks after the hearing, Johnny Cash asked June Carter to marry him again. He'd asked her dozens of times over the years. She'd always said no. Too complicated, too risky, too much to lose. This time, she said yes. Not because the custody battle had been won, not because things were stable,
but because she'd learned something in that lawyer's office. She'd learned that Johnny Cash was willing to sacrifice himself to protect her children, that he'd sat in that conference room and told her to testify against him if it meant keeping Carlene and Rosie safe. And she'd learned that she was willing to risk everything rather than validate the idea that his past made him permanently unworthy of trust. That mutual willingness to sacrifice, not for romance, not for sentiment, but for each other's essential humanity, that's what made the marriage possible. They were married on March 1, 1968, less than a month after that meeting in Margaret Hollis's office, less than 2 weeks after the custody hearing. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The supervision requirements remained. The judgment about Johnny's past remained. The knowledge that one mistake could trigger another custody battle remained. But they faced it together, not because everything was resolved, because they'd proven to each other that they wouldn't sacrifice each other for convenience, even when convenience looked like survival. Years later, someone asked June about that decision, about whether she'd ever regretted refusing to take her lawyer's advice. She said no, never. Because Margaret wanted me to win by treating Johnny like collateral damage, like someone whose recovery didn't matter as long as I got what I needed. And if I'd done that, if I'd stood in court and said he was too broken to trust, I would have won custody, but I would have lost something more important. What? The ability to look at him honestly, to see him as someone trying, not someone permanently failed. And he needed someone to see him that way, because everyone else, the lawyers, the press, the industry, even his own family sometimes, they'd already decided what he was, decided he was damage, decided his past was his permanent identity. She paused. I wasn't going to be another person who confirmed that, even if it cost me everything. This wasn't just about one custody hearing or one strategic decision. It was about what happens when legal victory requires moral compromise, when winning means validating a lie about someone you love, when survival demands you sacrifice someone's humanity to save your own interests. Margaret Hollis was right about the strategy. Testifying that Johnny Cash was kept away from June's daughters probably would have won the case more decisively, would have eliminated the supervision requirements, would have ended Rip's legal challenge permanently. But it would have required June to treat Johnny's recovery as irrelevant, to confirm that his past made him permanently dangerous, to look at a judge and say the person she loved was too broken to trust around children. And June Carter refused. Not because it was strategic, not because she knew it would work out, but because some victories cost more than defeat. Because confirming someone's worst fears about themselves, even to win a case that matters, is a betrayal that doesn't heal. Johnny Cash sat in that conference room willing to be sacrificed. June Carter sat across from him, unwilling to do the sacrificing. And that refusal, that unwillingness to win by destroying someone's dignity, that's what made everything else possible. Not because it guaranteed victory, but because it preserved what victory would have cost. If stories like this matter to you, stories about choices between strategic victory and moral cost, about refusing to win by confirming someone's worst fears about themselves, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the like button. These are the moments that don't make legal textbooks, the times when someone chose the harder path, not because it was smart, but because the easier path required becoming someone they couldn't live with. This is history told from inside impossible choices. And if that matters to you, I'm glad you're here.